I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would hesitate at her own bedroom door. Not because I'd lost my keys. Not because I'd forgotten something. But because I was afraid of what, or who, might be on the other side. That night, I stood there frozen. My hand was on the doorknob. My heart was pounding so loud I swore it echoed down the hallway. And the silence around me? It was thick, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your thoughts feel louder than they should be. I had no idea that everything in my life was about to change. No warning, no moment to prepare. Just a glimpse. A glimpse of something I wasn't supposed to see. And it all started with what I saw Adam doing. Adam, my stepson. Now listen, before your mind starts running wild, I need you to understand something. This isn't the kind of story that's easy to tell. It's not lighthearted, it's not cute, and it sure as hell isn't simple. It's the kind of story that leaves a knot in your stomach. The kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. just to sit in the dark and wonder, how did I get here? Because I'm not some villain. I didn't plan for this. I didn't ask for this. I was just a woman. A woman who had been lonely for so long, I forgot what it felt like to be seen. And Adam, he saw me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Not to the exact moment just yet, but to what led me there. To that door. That hesitation. That choice. You ever been in a house that looks perfect from the outside? Nice lawn, clean driveway, flowers on the porch? But inside, it's just a collection of people pretending? That was my home. A husband who worked too much. Who talked to me like a coworker. Who hadn't touched me, really touched me, in almost 2 years. I used to count how many times a week he looked at me. Eventually I stopped counting. And then came Adam. 19, polite, respectful, but quiet. He moved in after some issues with his mom. I didn't ask questions, wasn't my place. But there was a look in his eyes sometimes. Like he was carrying something heavy too. Funny how broken people can sense each other, isn't it? Still, I kept my distance. I had to. I was his stepmother. I cooked, cleaned, asked about his classes, stayed in my lane. Until that night. That one moment. When I saw something I wasn't meant to see. When I caught Adam in a moment so personal, so raw, I almost couldn't breathe. And what made it worse, what really twisted the knife, was that it involved me. I wish I could say I turned away and forgot it. I wish I could say I confronted him. I wish I could say a lot of things. But the truth? The truth is messier than that. And if you've ever been alone, I mean truly alone, in a house full of people. If you've ever walked past a mirror and not recognized the woman staring back. If you've ever craved a single moment of connection so badly that it scared you, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand how things unfolded the way they did. Before I go further, if you've ever had to carry a secret that made your chest feel heavy every single day, if you've ever wanted to scream the truth but didn't know how anyone would look at you afterward, hit that like button. And if you're new here, welcome to Shocking Infidelity Saga, where we share real stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the human heart. Subscribe and join our emotionally raw community. We don't judge here. Now, let me take you back to that night. To the hallway. To the silence. To the door I wasn't sure I wanted to open. But did anyway. I used to imagine being a stepmom would feel warm. Like something gentle, something nurturing. Helping someone grow. Offering guidance. Being a soft place to land. But instead, it just felt like another task on a to-do list. Get groceries. Do laundry. Check in with Adam. Smile at the dinner table even though no one's really talking. I'm 38. Been married 7 years. And I used to think I was lucky. My husband, Daniel, he's successful. He provides. Always made sure we had a nice house, 2 cars, insurance, a retirement plan. But he stopped looking at me a long time ago. I don't even think it was personal. I think he just forgot how to touch me like I mattered. How to talk to me without checking his phone between sentences. How to sit next to me without feeling like we were just 2 coworkers sharing a break room. He's out of town a lot. Business trips. Conferences. Meetings that turn into overnights. Sometimes he sends a text to check in. Sometimes he doesn't. But the thing that hurt the most was how quiet the house had become. Not from peace, but from distance. That silence got heavier when Adam moved in. Adam, he's 19. Daniel's son from his first marriage. He wasn't supposed to live with us. He had his own life, his own rhythm, and a complicated relationship with his mom. But something happened between them, something no one really wanted to talk about. Next thing I knew, he was bringing in boxes and setting up in the guest room down the hall. I didn't know how to feel about it at first. I mean, he's not my son. But I still felt responsible somehow. I started making more dinners, leaving notes on the fridge, asking about his classes even when all I got back was a shrug or a mumbled, "It's fine." He was quiet, polite, respectful, but there was this sadness in him, like he carried more weight than someone his age should. And every now and then, I'd catch him watching me, not in a way that felt wrong at the time, just different. Like he saw more than what I was pretending to be. And maybe that's what scared me the most. Because Daniel never really saw me anymore. Not who I was beneath the makeup and the practiced smiles. Not the woman who still cried in the shower sometimes just to release something she couldn't explain. Adam, he didn't say much. But his silence felt different than Daniel's. It didn't shut me out. It invited me in. The house itself didn't help. Big, spotless, and cold. Not a thing out of place. Not a photo frame turned the wrong way. You'd think a place like that would feel safe, comfortable. But it felt more like a museum. Like we were all just playing roles, keeping things polished, afraid to touch anything too real. We'd sit at the dining table, 3 chairs filled, but the room still felt empty. Daniel would scroll through his emails between bites. Adam would keep his eyes on his plate. And me? I'd smile. I'd make small talk. I'd ask about everyone's day. And then I'd clear the dishes in silence. Same as always. Sometimes I'd stand at the kitchen sink long after the plates were washed, just holding the sponge, staring out the window, not thinking about anything in particular. Just letting the quiet swallow me. I don't know when it started to shift. When Adam's presence stopped feeling like an intrusion and started feeling like a mirror. Maybe it was the way he'd say thank you after dinner, even when no one else did. Or how he'd notice if I changed something small, like wearing a different necklace or parting my hair on the other side. Or maybe it was just that he saw me. Not the way a man looks at a woman. Not yet. But the way a person looks at someone and really sees the cracks in them. It wasn't love. It wasn't desire. It was recognition. And that kind of thing. That kind of attention. It sneaks up on you. It makes you wonder what you've been missing. And what you might do to feel that again. One night, I came home earlier than expected. It wasn't planned. My meeting got canceled and Daniel was out of town, again. I remember pulling into the driveway and seeing all the lights off, except for that soft orange glow bleeding from Adam's window upstairs. The house looked still, like it was holding its breath. I pushed the front door open, quiet as I could, like I didn't want to disturb the air inside. Maybe I just didn't want to announce I was home. I don't know. The floors creaked under my heels. The kind of creak you only hear when you're not supposed to be there. The living room was untouched. No dishes in the sink. No sound from the TV. Just that soft hum of silence, the kind that feels like it's watching you. I headed upstairs, thinking maybe Adam was doing homework or asleep with the light on. But as I reached the landing, I heard something. Not music. Not talking. Something else. Soft, rhythmic, breathy. My heart skipped. I told myself I didn't want to invade his privacy. I told myself to just keep walking. But something made me stop. His door was cracked open. Just slightly. Enough to let a sliver of that warm light spill out into the hallway. Enough for me to hear what I wasn't supposed to. And enough for me to see. I wasn't trying to spy. I wasn't looking for anything. But my eyes caught it before my brain could catch up. He was on his bed, back slightly arched, hand moving under the blanket. The screen of his laptop lit up his face in that familiar cold glow. And for a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't what he was doing. It was what he was watching. It was me. Me. It took a second to register, because it was old. A video I'd nearly forgotten existed. Me and Daniel, from years ago. One of those private things we recorded during a rare night of passion, back when there was passion. I didn't even remember where we stored it. I thought it was gone. But there it was. And Adam was watching it. Watching me. I didn't make a sound. Just stood there, frozen. Part of me screamed to burst in, to snatch the laptop, to yell. Another part, the part I'm not proud of, stayed still. I backed away slowly, my breath caught in my throat, my hands shaking. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, the air too thick. I made it to my room and shut the door behind me like a ghost slipping back into its shell. And then, I just stood there, staring at nothing, mouth dry, heart racing. I felt disgusted, violated, confused, but also something else. Something I didn't want to name. Because the worst part wasn't that Adam was watching me. The worst part was how it made me feel. Not scared, not repulsed, but seen, wanted, and I hated myself for that. I sat on the edge of my bed, still shaking, trying to make sense of it. Why that video? How did he even find it? Did he know I saw him? Did he want me to see? I tried to tell myself it was an accident. That he stumbled across it. That it didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. There was something in the way he looked at me lately. Soft. Curious. Like I was more than just his stepmother. I wrapped myself in a robe and lay on top of the covers that night, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, replaying the image over and over. Not just what I saw, but what I felt. Because something had shifted. And no matter how hard I tried to tell myself it was just a moment, I knew it was the beginning of something else. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. I smiled, poured coffee, asked Adam if he wanted toast. He said yes, like he always did. Polite, calm, like everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, watching the steam rise from my cup, my stomach turning with every second that passed. He didn't avoid my eyes. But he didn't seek them either. Just sat there, eating quietly, like any other day. And maybe that's what made it worse. The not knowing. Did he know I saw? Was he ashamed? Did he want me to see? Or was it really just a mistake? Some sick, twisted coincidence? I spent the whole day trying to forget it. I cleaned things that didn't need cleaning. Rearranged bookshelves. Reorganized the pantry. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That image. That moment. Him. Watching me. I told myself maybe it was just curiosity. Maybe he'd found the video by accident. Maybe he clicked without knowing. But the longer I sat with it, the more I knew. It wasn't that. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. And what terrified me even more than that realization was how I felt. Because under all the panic, the confusion, the shame, there was this strange, awful thrill. I hated it. I hated me for it. But it was there. This sick flutter in my chest, like something had awakened. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Or maybe things I'd just been ignoring. The way Adam looked at me when I bent down to get something from a low cabinet. The way he lingered in the kitchen after dinner, watching me clean. The way his eyes moved, not rudely, not aggressively, but deliberately. Like he was seeing me in a way no one else had in years. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It had been so long since anyone looked at me like that. Daniel used to, when we first got married, when we were new. Back when he'd come up behind me while I cooked, wrap his arms around me, kiss the back of my neck. That version of him disappeared somewhere between year 3 and year 4. Now, if he touched me, it was in passing. A pat on the shoulder. A tap on the arm. Mechanical. Hollow. The kind of touch that says, I know I should be touching you, so here's something. But Adam's glances, they weren't hollow. And once I realized that, I became hyper-aware of his presence. I could feel when he walked into a room before I even turned around. His footsteps were slower around me, softer. When he spoke, his voice dropped just a little, like he was talking to me, not just near me. And me? I started changing too. At first, it was small. Harmless, I told myself. I let my robe hang a little looser in the mornings. wore tank tops instead of oversized t-shirts when I made breakfast. I didn't do it for him. That's what I kept telling myself. But I knew that wasn't true. I caught myself dressing differently, slower, more carefully, choosing fabrics that clung to the right places. When I knew he might walk past my room, I lingered by the door just a little longer, hair unpinned, skin still warm from the shower. I hated myself for it, but I didn't stop. And when our eyes met, those 2 long glances across the kitchen or down the hall, I didn't look away. I should have, but I didn't. Instead, I started craving it. Craving that attention, that energy, that heat that had been missing from my life for so long. I almost forgot what it felt like. It wasn't about Adam, not at first. It was about me. About feeling like I was alive again. Like someone saw me. And yet, every night when I went to bed, the guilt came rushing in like a tide I couldn't stop. This was wrong. So wrong. He was my husband's son. Even if we'd never been close. Even if we'd only lived under the same roof for a few months. That didn't matter. But the line between what's appropriate and what's forbidden, it wasn't just blurred anymore. It was moving, shifting, becoming harder and harder to see. And every day that passed, I felt myself inching closer to it. One look at a time. It started with little things. Innocent things, if you looked at them from far enough away. But up close, they weren't innocent at all. The first time it happened, I was coming home from the store, bags in both hands, arms aching. I was fumbling with the keys when the door opened before I even knocked. Adam. He didn't say anything at first. Just reached out and took the heavier bags from my arms, his fingers brushing mine. It was brief, but I felt it. Like a spark or maybe a question. One we were both too afraid to ask out loud. He carried them into the kitchen and set them down gently, like he was afraid they'd break. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You shouldn't have to do all this alone." 6 words. That's all it was. But they stayed with me. Because Daniel never said things like that anymore. Daniel assumed I'd handle everything. Groceries, cooking, cleaning, scheduling, smiling. And somehow Adam, 19 years old, noticed more than the man I'd been married to for 7 years. After that, our conversations changed. They got deeper. At first it was just casual, little chats in the kitchen about music or school or books. But then he started asking me real questions. About myself. About my life. About who I was before I married his father. And when I answered, he listened. Not with that distracted, half-nodding glance Daniel gave me from behind a laptop screen. Adam listened with his whole body. Leaned in. Met my eyes. Responded in ways that made me feel known. And I started looking forward to it. To him. One night, Daniel was out of town again. I was sitting in the living room with a glass of wine and an old movie playing softly. Adam walked in, hesitated, then sat down on the other end of the couch. We didn't speak for a while. Just watched in silence. Then the scene changed. The couple on screen kissed. Slowly, longingly. I felt my body tense. I didn't look at him. I didn't have to. I could feel the shift in the air. A few minutes later, I reached for the remote. He reached at the same time. Our hands touched. We both paused. Just long enough for it to mean something. Then he pulled his hand back. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I shook my head, but I didn't say it was okay. I couldn't. Because it wasn't. And it was. After that, the touches became more frequent. More deliberate. A brush of the hand when he passed me the salt. His arm grazing mine as we stood too close in the hallway. A hand on the small of my back when he stepped aside to let me through a door. Small things. Easy to explain away. But I stopped explaining. Because part of me didn't want them to stop. I found myself seeking him out. Lingering in the kitchen longer, hoping he'd come down. Taking walks in the garden at dusk, knowing he might follow. Leaving my bedroom door cracked, just slightly. And then, the notes started. The first one was tucked inside a book I left on the couch. Just 5 words, written in messy handwriting. "You're more than they see." I stared at it for a long time. The second came a few days later, slid under the sugar bowl on the kitchen counter. You deserve to be felt, not just seen. And then another. If I could rewrite time, I'd start with you. Each note made my chest tighten. Not with guilt, but with ache. Ache for something I couldn't have. Something I shouldn't want. I kept them all, hidden in a drawer beneath old scarves and forgotten birthday cards. But I'd take them out late at night, when the world was quiet, and read them like they were love letters from a past life I'd never lived. One afternoon, I was cleaning the living room when I knocked over Adam's sketchbook. I didn't mean to open it. I was just picking it up, ready to slide it back into the bookshelf. But the page was already open. And there I was, drawn in pencil, soft, detailed, sitting on the edge of my bed, brushing my hair. I remembered that moment. It was just last week. I didn't know he'd been watching. I stared at the sketch, my hand trembling. He had captured something so intimate, so raw. It felt like looking at a version of myself I didn't know existed anymore. Not the tired wife. Not the invisible woman. But someone, desired. Was I imagining it? Or was he, inviting something? I told myself to stay away. That this was dangerous. That this was wrong. That I was playing with fire in a house built from dry wood. But I didn't stop. I didn't close the door. I didn't throw the notes away. I didn't erase the sketch. I kept going, one small moment at a time. And deep down, I knew where it was leading. The night it happened, the sky was angry. Thunder rolled low in the distance, the kind that rumbles in your chest. The rain came hard, slashing against the windows like it was trying to get in. Daniel was out of town, again. A conference this time. Somewhere sunny, I think. I didn't ask. The house felt different. Not just quiet, charged. Heavy, like it was holding its breath. Around 9, the power went out. Just like that, total darkness. No hum of the refrigerator, no glow from the hallway nightlight. Just silence and the sound of rain hammering the roof. I lit a few candles and placed them around the living room. The flickering light made the shadows dance. The storm outside felt distant compared to what was happening inside me. Adam came downstairs. No shirt, just loose sweatpants, damp hair from the shower. He paused when he saw me, candle in hand. Then smiled, just barely. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. Just trying to keep the house from turning into a cave. He sat across from me on the floor, both of us facing the coffee table, the candlelight between us. We talked. Nothing deep at first, just about how the storm reminded him of being a kid, how he used to hide under blankets and pretend thunder was just giants bowling in the sky. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt good to hear his voice. To hear something human. Then the silence came. A long one. Not awkward, just full. He looked at me. Really looked. And I couldn't take it anymore. I asked. Softly, barely above a whisper. "Why that video?" He blinked. Swallowed. I could see the answer in his eyes before he said it. Because it was the only time I saw you being loved. Those words cracked something open in me. Something I'd been holding shut for years. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stared at him as the candlelight flickered between us, making the room feel smaller. More private. More intimate. He reached out slowly, like he was afraid I'd flinch. He touched my hand. I didn't pull away. His fingers moved gently across mine, and I swear the whole world disappeared. The storm. The guilt. The years of silence. It was just him, and me, and everything we hadn't said. My eyes burned. I felt the tears before they fell. One slipped down my cheek. He reached up and wiped it away with his thumb. And then, just silence. No words. No breath. Just a moment. And then he kissed me. Soft at first. Careful. Like he was waiting for permission. And I gave it. I kissed him back. And once that line was crossed, it all unraveled. I don't remember standing. I don't remember how we moved from the living room to the couch. All I remember is heat. Skin. Breath. The way he held me like I was something fragile but necessary. The way I let go of everything I thought made me strong. The way our bodies spoke in a language I hadn't heard in years. There was no fear in that moment. No hesitation. Just surrender. To him. To myself. To the woman I used to be, and the one I never got to become. Afterward, we lay there, tangled in the quiet, the candle burning low. I stared at the ceiling, my body still humming, my heart cracked wide open. And I knew. I knew the second it was over that everything had changed. There was no going back. No erasing it. No pretending it didn't happen. No excuse good enough to make it right. We had crossed a line that didn't blur, it shattered. And I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The morning after, I couldn't look at him. I woke up before the sun, wrapped myself in my robe, and went downstairs like I was trying to outrun what had already happened. The candle had burned out on the table. The couch cushions were still dented. The blanket we used was tossed on the floor. All of it felt too loud, like the room was screaming at me. I made coffee with shaky hands. Didn't even drink it. Just needed something to do. When I heard his footsteps on the stairs, I froze. And when he appeared in the doorway, eyes soft, lips parted like he was about to say something, I looked away. I couldn't handle the hope in his face. Because hope meant he believed something could come from this. And I couldn't let him believe that. He stood there for a moment, waiting, but I kept my back to him, pretending to clean the counter that didn't need cleaning. "Hey," he said gently. "Can we?" "I have a lot to do today," I cut in. My voice sounded wrong. Tight. Clipped. He paused. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. "Okay," he said after a moment. Quiet. Hurt. And then he walked away. I sank onto a stool, heart pounding, stomach twisting. What had I done? Every part of me ached. Not just physically, but in this deep, aching way, like something inside me had cracked open and now I was trying to shove it shut with shaking hands. For the rest of the day, I avoided him. If I heard him upstairs, I stayed down. If I went to the kitchen, I waited until I couldn't hear movement. I told myself I was protecting him. But the truth was I was hiding. From him. From myself. From what we did. Later that evening, Daniel came home. His suitcase thudded against the floor, and his voice echoed through the house, too normal, too cheerful. It made my skin crawl. He kissed my cheek. I flinched. He noticed. I could see it in the way his smile faltered. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he asked what I made for dinner. I had to force myself through it, serving plates, pretending everything was the same. But it wasn't. Nothing was. Adam came down last, slower than usual. He didn't meet my eyes. Sat across the table, barely touched his food. I kept my eyes on my plate the whole time. Daniel tried to talk about his trip. Asked Adam about school. Made jokes that didn't land. None of us laughed. After dinner, Adam disappeared upstairs. Daniel looked at me with a narrowed gaze. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, too fast. "Just tired." He didn't press. He never did. But I could feel it. He sensed something was off. Not enough to accuse me. Just enough to wonder. That night, when Daniel reached for me in bed, I flinched again. Said I had a headache. He rolled over without a word. Fell asleep. And I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, hearing the storm inside me now. The next few days were worse. Adam barely spoke to me. His eyes, once full of warmth, were now heavy with confusion and something else, betrayal. I'd given him something, only to snatch it away. I'd let him believe there was a doorway, and then slammed it shut. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He was just hurt. And it killed me. I tried to erase it. But every room whispered what we did. The couch, the hallway, the staircase. Even the mirror in the bathroom, where I caught my reflection and didn't recognize her. I went through the motions of life like a shadow of myself. The guilt pressed down on me constantly, but so did the ache. The ache of something that felt real, even if it was wrong. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Not my friends, not my husband, not even myself, really. So I wore the guilt like perfume, close to the skin, invisible to most, but always there. And Adam. He became quieter. Pulled back. Like he was trying to protect himself from the whiplash of my choices. Or maybe he just finally saw me for what I really was. A woman lost in her own emptiness, desperate for something warm, even if it burned. The morning after, I couldn't look at him. I woke up before the sun, wrapped myself in my robe, and went downstairs like I was trying to outrun what had already happened. The candle had burned out on the table. The couch cushions were still dented. The blanket we used was tossed on the floor. All of it felt too loud, like the room was screaming at me. I made coffee with shaky hands. Didn't even drink it. Just needed something to do. When I heard his footsteps on the stairs, I froze. And when he appeared in the doorway, eyes soft, lips parted like he was about to say something, I looked away. I couldn't handle the hope in his face, because hope meant he believed something could come from this. And I couldn't let him believe that. He stood there for a moment, waiting, but I kept my back to him, pretending to clean the counter that didn't need cleaning. "Hey," he said gently. "Can we?" "I have a lot to do today," I cut in. My voice sounded wrong. Tight. Clipped. He paused. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. "Okay," he said after a moment. Quiet. Hurt. And then he walked away. I sank onto a stool, heart pounding, stomach twisting. What had I done? Every part of me ached. Not just physically, but in this deep, aching way, like something inside me had cracked open and now I was trying to shove it shut with shaking hands. For the rest of the day, I avoided him. If I heard him upstairs, I stayed down. If I went to the kitchen, I waited until I couldn't hear movement. I told myself I was protecting him, but the truth was I was hiding. From him. From myself. From what we did. Later that evening, Daniel came home. His suitcase thudded against the floor, and his voice echoed through the house, too normal, too cheerful. It made my skin crawl. He kissed my cheek. I flinched. He noticed. I could see it in the way his smile faltered. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he asked what I made for dinner. I had to force myself through it, serving plates, pretending everything was the same. But it wasn't. Nothing was. Adam came down last, slower than usual. He didn't meet my eyes. Sat across the table, barely touched his food. I kept my eyes on my plate the whole time. Daniel tried to talk about his trip. Asked Adam about school. Made jokes that didn't land. None of us laughed. After dinner, Adam disappeared upstairs. Daniel looked at me with a narrowed gaze. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, too fast. "Just tired." He didn't press. He never did. But I could feel it. He sensed something was off. Not enough to accuse me. Just enough to wonder. That night, when Daniel reached for me in bed, I flinched again. Said I had a headache. He rolled over without a word. Fell asleep. And I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, hearing the storm inside me now. The next few days were worse. Adam barely spoke to me. His eyes, once full of warmth, were now heavy with confusion and something else, betrayal. I'd given him something, only to snatch it away. I'd let him believe there was a doorway, and then slammed it shut. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He was just hurt. And it killed me. I tried to erase it. But every room whispered what we did. The couch, the hallway, the staircase. Even the mirror in the bathroom, where I caught my reflection and didn't recognize her. I went through the motions of life like a shadow of myself. The guilt pressed down on me constantly, but so did the ache. The ache of something that felt real, even if it was wrong. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Not my friends, not my husband, not even myself, really. So I wore the guilt like perfume, close to the skin, invisible to most, but always there. And Adam. He became quieter. Pulled back. Like he was trying to protect himself from the whiplash of my choices. Or maybe he just finally saw me for what I really was. A woman lost in her own emptiness, desperate for something warm, even if it burned. I haven't told anyone this, not even my therapist. It's lived inside me for so long, pressing against my ribs like a secret trying to claw its way out. But tonight, I needed to let it breathe. Not for forgiveness. Not for redemption. Just to be heard. Because sometimes the weight of what we carry alone becomes heavier than the sin itself. And I'm tired of carrying this in silence. Was I wrong for what happened? Or was I just human, desperate to be seen, to be touched, to feel something after years of feeling nothing? I still don't know. But I know this. It's easy to say what you'd do until you're the one standing in that hallway, with your hand on a doorknob, and your heart breaking inside your chest over something you didn't even know you were capable of. Let me know in the comments, have you ever crossed a line you couldn't uncross? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and wondered, who even am I anymore? What would you have done in my place? And if this story touched something in you, if it made you pause, made you feel, made you remember a version of yourself that you buried long ago, then don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with someone who might be carrying their own invisible weight. And please, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, where we bring the secrets people don't dare say out loud into the light. Because the truth is, we all have stories we're scared to tell. But maybe, just maybe, the telling is where the healing begins. And if you remember nothing else from what I shared tonight, remember this: loneliness is a dangerous hunger. If you ignore it long enough, if you pretend it doesn't exist, it'll start feeding on whatever's closest. Even if it's something forbidden. Even if it's something that was never meant to be touched. Even if it destroys you. So don't wait to be seen. Speak. Feel. Reach. Before the silence eats you alive.